All right. Welcome to Disturbing the Priest. I'm your host, Brandon Baddock, and this is our first video podcast we're doing. And I'm honored to have my friend Juan as the guest. Welcome, Juan.
Happy to be here.
Yeah, pretty exciting.
Yeah, here I am.
I thought who better to have on the pod than Juan? You know what I mean? Because I want to do a whole episode on vinyl. So who better to get than like the biggest addict I've seen when it comes to vinyl. Jesus Christ. But yeah, so what's your whole history with vinyl records? I'm pretty sure I got you into vinyl, right?
Yeah. So the funny story with that is I remember when you first got into vinyl back in like senior year of high school, or it might have been junior year, somewhere around there. But I just remember how cool it was, and I was like, I love music. I listen to music all the time. Maybe I should like buy a record player, something like that. And then my uncle shows up with this like little classroom record speaker that he bought at a yard sale and a bunch of records in like a hat box. And I just thought it was the coolest thing. I remember plugging it in and at at my college, and because I was doing work, landscaping work at the time over there, I plugged it in and I heard. I believe the first record I spun was Dark Side of the Moon because that was like the only one that I knew, and in that whole like
Oh
stack of like,
wow. That's very iconic, actually.
yeah,
What
that
an
was like,
interesting first pick of yours.
well, that was like the one that I knew the most at the time, like from that stack. It was like a lot of generic like boomer like kind of like records in that whole hat box, but all the records didn't have a sleeve. They were all beat to death. But there was Dark Side of the Moon, and I was like, you know what? Let's see how this sounds. And of course, it sounded really awful because the needle hadn't been changed on that record player in like 40 years. The record was beat to death, but it still sounded better than like what I had heard on Spotify. Like the sound
Really?
was very clear. Yeah, I mean, you know, even I don't know. I guess it was the whole like it might have been more like a placebo where I was like the warmth sound and maybe the excitement of getting like a 40, actually no, it might have been like a 50-year-old record player just spinning again and hearing an old record. I just thought it was the coolest thing, and then it just kind
Yeah.
of spiraled out of control from there.
Now, do you think vinyl is better than digital?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I know we have friends that might disagree with that, but but I mean, I do genuinely believe so. There's something about the warm sound that an analog process has. Whether it's actually real or it's a placebo, it doesn't matter because I personally feel that like if you enjoy it that way, then that's how it should be enjoyed as long as you're having fun. But me personally, I do think it sounds way, way, way better. Like,
Yeah, it's a very intimate experience with like listening to music because it's straight like from the needle out of the speaker, you know. There's no wave signals, there's no Bluetooth, uh there's no fourth, fifth, sixth hand listening. Like you're just getting it straight from the vinyl, which I really like.
yeah, it's all a very analog process, especially if you're using a vintage record. When it was done in all analog, there was no digital mastering involved. It was all
Yeah.
analog. Like, there's nothing than better than listening to like a mono record from the 60s. And I'm not just saying that because my record player is broken, I can only play mono. I mean that like because back in the 1960s, most records were recorded using mono, like one microphone. It was all monophonic sound and just the way everything was positioned. But I do think that like the richness of the sound, especially if it was very well mastered, like say a Beatles record, like the sound quality and the richness of the sound in those records, especially like the very early pressings, unbeatable.
Yeah.
It sounds like they're right next to you.
Oh yeah. um some of the Beatles albums that are what is that label, the very iconic
Oh,
Parlophone?
Parlophone,
Yeah, Parlophone.
Parlophone.
Yeah, I do have a Parlophone Revolver, which is courtesy of you, right?
Yeah, that was my boss's.
Yeah.
that's
beat to
also
death, but it sounds fantastic.
yeah, that's another thing. Sometimes these records trick you. They look like they were frisbeed around the backyard by a bunch of toddlers, and then you put it on the like turntable, and it sounds brand new. I don't know how. I guess it's because they had like deeper grooves, so a lot of the scratches are superficial.
Yeah,
But
Parlophone is a very iconic label in like the classic rock community. And when it comes to metal, I feel like the most iconic would be Vertigo. Would you say?
I'd say Vertigo was the one that started it all, certainly, because that's where a lot of the heavier acts of the time were. I mean, Black Sabbath, obviously, that's the big one. That's the one that started the whole damn genre, for God's sake. It was
Yeah, yeah.
that was
Something
the
I
one that
found
started
out.
it all.
Yeah, something I found out recently is Vertigo was
And
actually founded in '69.
yeah, yeah, it was founded in 1969. It was a subsidiary of Philips Records, which was a Dutch company, but
Mm,
that was like their more progressive label because at the time psychedelic rock was still all the rage. You know, after Sergeant Pepper and what's it called? Sergeant Pepper was the one that started it all, but the Doors, that was like, along with Sergeant Pepper, the most commercial psychedelic rock album, and many record companies wanted to catch up. They wanted to
yeah,
like get on that train.
yeah.
So
I think going
what
back
ended
to
up happening is a lot of these labels just started signing all these bands that would like, and the whole psychedelic. That's how it got started. That's how we got the Stooges. That's how we got MC5. That's how we got Black Sabbath. That's how we got all of these bands.
nice.
And
Yeah,
Vertigo, that was like the most that was like the underground label in the, I guess, in Europe, because Philips was a Dutch company, but that's where you get a lot of the heavy bands of the time. Black Sabbath being obviously the most commercially successful one, and they started a whole new genre, which is pretty cool.
yeah, which is awesome. And Vertigo is classic. Like they had a lot of prog stuff, but funny enough, Vertigo also pressed the Black Album by Metallica as well. Um, like they have a really weird impact on metal vinyl because not only did they do like Sabbath, they did like the most commercially successful metal album of all time, the Black Album too, which is very cool. Good luck buying one though. um, because I
They're
don't
out
think they
there.
repress them. Yeah, they're out there, but and it's probably
They've
the best Metallica album you'll ever hear, but it's quality wise.
sound quality wise, yeah, I don't know if I'd
Yeah.
agree that it's their
Yeah,
best,
no,
but
not at all. Um,
they're most commercially successful. Although I don't know that, although Stranger Things might have changed that,
yeah, good. I'll probably never be buying an original Master of Puppets now
which I am. I
because of
got
that.
lucky.
Yeah,
I bought it right
bastard.
before.
Oh my god. I
I've
I had
actually,
a couple chances.
yeah, I've had two of them.
Yeah.
One
I
don't One of them is unplayable though. The other one is a very, I got very lucky with it.
yeah, it's so funny because our friend John McWaters, he had a copy of Master of Puppets, and side A was maybe 30 seconds long because of how much it skipped. It's just a disaster. It's like, well, why even buy it at that point? Um, but there's some iconic labels, like I have some here. Metal Blade, obviously.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Megaforce. Megaforce is really good. That is a great sounding label. Combat too. Um,
Megaforce is funny because some would argue that the first true metal band of all time was Blue Cheer with Summertime Blues. They're like one of the heaviest bands ever. And
yeah,
it's been argued that they were like the first true metal band. I don't know if that's true. I still think that Sabbath was it, but I can see why people argue that. But where I was going
yeah,
with that is that later on in the 1980s, Blue Cheer released an album which the name escapes me at the time, but it was released on Megaforce. So the band that started it all, just for some, would later join in that iconic label that some would say was like the second most important label in all of metal history.
Yeah, which is wild. I'm not sure how, like, my whole opinion on Blue Cheer has changed. Like when I first kind of got into them and discovered them, like, all right, they're pretty heavy, they're pretty awesome, they're definitely metal. There might be the first metal band, but honestly, like now thinking about it, I don't know. Like it also Blue Cheer, Summertime Blues. That's the song, right?
Yeah, it
Yeah,
wasn't
that's a
even.
cover. It's a cover. It's not even their song.
No, it's Eddie Cochran. It's a rockabilly song.
Yeah, so I don't know. I think metal also, like with Sabbath, you get the heaviness, but you also get the lyrics
Hmm.
and the whole atmosphere of the song, which I think makes it the first metal song. But I don't know. Some people are a sucker for covers and just bringing the dial up to 11, and that's all it takes. Uh,
Oh, yeah, I
they
mean,
recorded that on like a pier, right? I think they did. It was so loud they couldn't even like do it in the studio. They had to record it outside. Some crazy story.
oh
Um,
wow, I didn't know that.
yeah, it's a weird band. I don't know why they were so obsessed with just making a loud, heavy thing, but Blue Cheer's cool. I like them. I have is that album literally just called Summertime Blues?
No, it's called Vincivus Reptum, which I don't know what it means. It's some Latin thing, but
Yeah,
it's
I
a
wouldn't have guessed.
yeah, it's a good album. It's I have a mono copy of it. I actually just got rid of my stereo copy because I needed cash, but
Yeah,
but the mono one sounds amazing. I'm surprised that came out in mono. I came out in '68. Mono was out the door by then, but it's still a great sounding record. It's got all the elements of like, that late '60s psych, heavy blues rock element that would go on to become metal.
yeah,
Because that's what metal is. It's just a mix of like heavy blues rock and hard psych.
yeah, totally. So going back to like just like vinyl collecting and metal, like what is collecting metal records like in 2022?
Impossible if you're going for originals.
Yeah, pretty much.
You have to have very deep pockets or have insane luck. Like I will say that I've had some insane luck with some of these because not only was I given a second pressing of Kill 'Em All by Metallica, but I was also, but I also had the opportunity to find not one but two Master of Puppets, and I was very lucky to score an original pressing of Peace Cells when it was still more or less affordable. Now you can't find those cheap.
Really? What did you get it last year?
Yeah,
They
I got it
changed
last
that
year.
much within a year?
Well, I mean, they metal has just become really expensive. I mean, I couldn't find the Iron Maiden debut for what I paid for it. I paid and this was in 2019 in New York City. I paid like $25 for a mint first press. And when I say mint, that thing looked unplayed. It's I can't find that
Wow.
record for like under $60 nowadays.
Yeah, it's wild. It's so
Mhm.
crazy. I think it's like the more popular vinyl's getting, the more metal is starting to spike. I'm really glad I got some of the records I did when I got them. Like I have Peace Cells behind me, a first press, and I'm very happy to own that. Same with Merciful Fate. Very rare albums and some that I'll probably never see in the wild again. So
Yeah.
it's very first come, first serve. There's never really a perfect time for metal vinyl, I feel like. It's not like it's a stock market where you got to buy them when it's like, the stock market's low. It's like, no, it is always, we are losing so many originals to people. So buy them,
If you
not
see
to
them,
support consumerism. Uh,
no, I mean it's true. I mean it's also like depending on luck. I mean, I found that Seven Churches while you were out of town, and I had no interest on it, but you probably would have snatched that the second you saw it.
oh yeah.
That's it's one of those things where like it's all about the timing, like you said.
I can't believe you found a Seven Churches.
Yeah,
How
and I had
much
no.
was that?
I think they wanted like 60 for it. It was a very clean press too.
I
But
would have bought that in a second.
yeah,
60 for that. That's amazing, actually.
yeah. You gotta
Um,
you gotta go to Wantless Records. That's where they had it.
yeah, want
And I just gave it away to people. So now you gotta be there, Brandon.
where is Want List?
It's in Newton off
Well,
of
there's a plug right there.
there's a plug of free advertising, but they're good people. They always give good prices. So happy to
Yeah.
support them because they're always giving us good deals and things. They're very
Something
fair.
something else that's cool about metal vinyl is the amount of bootlegs there are. There's a surprising amount of metal bootlegs out there. Um, I have like a million Sabbath ones, and they all sound fantastic. It's the heavy metal vinyl community is very passionate, I've come to find. Like there's a ton of Metallica bootlegs, even Ghost. There's a bunch of their bootlegs out there. Even even just kind of like even Revocation, the band I'm repping right now. I've seen Revocation bootlegs floating around on vinyl. So it's very cool to see that like the vinyl community and bootleggers are like really pressing live albums, putting out more metal stuff on vinyl. So I think it's really awesome and cool. Um, Juan, you probably don't have any metal bootlegs, right?
I'm trying to think. I don't think so.
You
I'm
just
not.
have the like iconic classics.
Yeah, I'm very.
Um,
I'm very. When it comes to metal, I'm very basic. I'm not. I am by no means a metalhead. I appreciate him and I respect the artist because it takes a lot of talent to write this kind of music, and their influences often lie in things like classical music, which is by no means simple.
yeah.
Um,
It's very interesting that some of the most iconic vinyl is metal. There's a lot of metal albums that are seen as like being iconic to have on vinyl. Master of Puppets is one of them. Black Sabbath. You know what I mean? There's so many uh very iconic metal vinyl records out there, and I feel like not a ton of genres. Obviously classic rock and jazz and whatnot, um records that have kind of come out in the era of vinyl, but I think there's a lot of really cool classic metal vinyl, and I can even say like death metal, and some black metal stuff, which is real like, oh my god, uh what is why am I blanking on the name? Dawn of the Black Hearts.
oh, iconic.
Yeah, so it's very interesting that like there isn't really that with anything like really hip hop or rap, or pop, I feel like.
Yeah, I'm not sure that somebody's suicide photo on the cover of the album would make a great cover for any genre.
Yeah.
I mean, that's as metal as it gets, but you know.
Yeah, but
funny
it
enough
is
that funny enough
interesting,
that yeah, funny enough that record first came out in my home country of Colombia.
which is
Um,
weird, which is so funny.
I mean, the connection was there. I mean,
Yeah, from Norway to Colombia.
yeah, I mean, Mayhem. I mean, Medellin, especially the city where I come from, there was a big metal scene going on at the time. We were having our war with Pablo Escobar's drug dealers, and the fact that like times were desperate, people were depressed because there was nothing but like bad news. I mean, the '80s was a very shitty decade for Colombia, so in Medellin, like a punk and metal scene just began to sprang up. And there were a lot of bands over there. One of them called Parabellum actually influenced Mayhem.
Classic. Yeah.
Yeah, they influenced Mayhem. So a lot of these records would find their way to Norway and they would influence the bands there. And then the records from Norway would make their way to Colombia and they would influence the bands there. So Colombia and Norway, I mean, Colombia, it's not a known story, but I do say that Colombia has a very big part to play in metal history, at least when it comes to Norwegian metal.
Which is so weird.
Mm-hmm.
What a weird connection. Also, I think records were pressed in Colombia once CDs took over completely. Or no, where was No More Tears pressed? Because there's like one pressing of that.
Well, there's many. I mean, you gotta
Is
remember the U.S. They like to be trendsetters, but they like to fix things where they ain't broke. Um, Vinyl was a perfectly fine format. Sure, it's inconvenient and it's big, but it had been around for like almost 100 years at that point, and it proven to be quite reliable. I mean, CDs and cassettes are fine too, I guess, for the convenience, but you can't really beat the sound of vinyl. Like I said, that's just my personal opinion.
yeah,
But anyway, in the US, vinyl was kind of phased out in like 1992. I'd say that's when they stopped mass producing it. Might have been even a little earlier than that, but you couldn't find these things on vinyl. Hell, a lot of these commercial albums weren't even pressed on vinyl on and set in like small quantities in the US. In Europe and South America, especially, they kept going up until like they kept going throughout the 90s, and then I'd say by around the early 2000s, that's when vinyl was completely phased out worldwide, except for like small private pressings and whatnot. um, but you could get No More Tears in Colombia, you could get Nirvana's Nevermind, you could get Helmet Unsung, all of those grunge um, and metal records all throughout the 90s in many countries outside of the US for that reason. It's because they kept pressing them in small quantities.
yeah, which is crazy to me. Where do you think they pressed the most records in like the 90s?
Probably in Europe and Japan, because
Yeah, fair. That makes
they
sense.
still they still had a high demand, and the Europeans knew the value of vinyl, so they kept it going a little more there. But unfortunately, commercial trends shifted into a different direction, so it was no longer commercially viable until the 20 teens when vinyl made a comeback.
Yeah.
That's why we went from having a bunch of plants to, I believe, there's only like 6 or 7 plants worldwide to keep up with demand. And that's not really enough. I think it might be even less than that. And there's
Wow.
only like one plant right now that makes the lacquers and the masters, since the other one burned to the ground a few years ago.
Really?
Yeah, so there's only one plant making lacquers. So wow,
Wow.
that's why we're seeing so many delays with records.
It burnt to the ground? The other one?
Yeah, yeah,
Jesus, when was that?
like a year or two ago, something like that.
Yeah, so there's also Mofi albums, which I know you cream over.
Uh,
Classics.
no, I
Um
don't.
you,
I
you don't
don't.
like them? Oh, is it are we
That's
thinking
that.
of John?
Yeah, that's John.
But
I don't
I
care for mofas. They're overpriced, and
yeah.
I don't have the equipment to make them shine anyway. I mean,
Yeah, true.
the old mofas from like the 80s, the 70s, and 80s, they sound fantastic. I had a Neil Diamond one that I found for like $5. And that thing sounded incredible, but that was an old one when they actually were all analog.
Yeah, that's
Now
cool.
now
That's
they're all
cool.
digital, and they still sound good, but I don't know. I still couldn't make them shine in my system, so they're
Yeah.
a gimmick. They really are a gimmick for people with deep pockets. I don't really
Do
care.
you think you're just paying for the name with MoFi?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, they do sound good. I mean, I've heard them in good systems, and they can sound amazing. But to me, they're
Yeah.
just a gimmick. I mean, a lot any record can sound good with a good system, unless
Yeah.
it was mass. There's a few exceptions to that, but most big name records like the Beatles, the Stones, Pink Floyd, Led Zeppelin, all the things that like generic normal people will buy, like non-collectors will buy. For the most part, those will very well master. They'll sound good. You don't need to pay $500 for an audiophile pressing, because
Yeah.
most of the remasters are pretty good. Or you could just buy an original that sounds equally good.
Yeah. I was actually surprised to find out and see that there's actually a Megadeth MoFi out there. Countdown to Extinction. There is an official MoFi that you can buy for only like $400. So
Only it's probably as much as the original.
honestly, it's just it's so stupid. I think MoFi is just like, how can we really get the money of people who just like burn money on vinyl? So there we
It's a
go.
gimmick. Like I said, I think it's a gimmick. Because unless you have like a $10,000 system, you're really not gonna get the most out of it. You
Yeah.
gotta have like, and you gotta have a pretty acoustically designed room. You gotta have a lot of things. So I just don't bother. I just buy original pressings because they're gonna sound as good, if not better. Like
I would,
look at the Zeppelin 2 RL. I don't think there's a copy on planet Earth that will ever sound better,
yeah.
or if there's any copy that sounds as good as
uh
those.
I'd love to hear like a clean copy of
Yeah,
one of those. That'd be just have it like on a good stereo,
yeah,
crank that. Maybe if I get rich, I'll buy one, but
yeah. I
something
could have.
I
Me and McWaters, when we went to the Marlboro show, and you were there too. Um, One of our friends, he's a record collector. His name's Will. Hi, Will. If you ever watched this, um, he found one for $10 from an old couple that was selling their collection at that show for $10, and it was perfect. It was like a
they
near
had
mint
no
copy.
idea. They had
They
no
had no
idea.
idea, but he did. He did. He knew what he
Wow.
found.
That guy, what a lucky $10. That's the
Yeah.
thing with vinyl
I think it
records
was ten
too.
dollars. It was cheap. It wasn't over
It
30. I
might
know
as
that
well,
much.
yeah, it might as well be 10. He might as well have gotten it for free.
Yeah.
Um, that's the thing with vinyl records. It's like, yeah, it's an expensive hobby, but like sometimes you can score. It's a very like gambling lottery hobby, I feel like, right? Wouldn't you say?
Yeah, I mean, if you know what you look for, I mean, most people, I mean, I don't even like to think of the times when I was starting out and I missed on a bunch of things because I didn't know what I was looking for. You really gotta know what you're looking for, otherwise you're gonna miss a bunch of grails. I mean,
Yeah.
I always, you know, I prefer to go to the record stores alone because I know I'll annoy people with how long I take there,
Yeah, yeah.
but that's part of
I'm
why I
familiar.
find that's part of why I find the things I find. It's because I'm willing to dig and spend the time. And that's how I've been able to find some of the things I have in my collection. That's how I was able to find that Megadeth for only like $35.
Crazy. And that Vaporwave album.
Oh yeah, Macintosh Plus. I heard that's
Yeah.
getting a repress again.
Is it actually Floral Shop?
Yeah, it's getting a repress, so I'll be getting that.
Yeah. Very, very cool. That's something you're gonna get it actually.
I might if they do another pink vinyl one, because the clear one, it doesn't look right. I
You
think it
want it
looks
to be
better in pink.
bubblegum pink. I I
Yeah,
I totally agree. I think bubblegum pink is like the perfect
it's
color
like
for that.
it's like the purpose that it's part of the aesthetic.
Yeah.
It makes it perfect.
Yeah. Oh my god.
Twister clear doesn't look right.
I do also want to mention as we kind of wrap this up, the Sleep Dope Smoker vinyl variant that came out recently. So what
Hmm.
so what Sleep did is they pressed Dope Smoker, but it's not just some ordinary pressing, it's a weed pressing. They literally pressed weed leaves into the vinyl. So while like when you look at the vinyl, you can literally see the weed leaves in the record, which is so amazing. Imagine listening to Dope Smoker on weed while being high on weed. Is the all I can't I think that might surpass like listening to Dark Side of the Moon on vinyl, like the ultimate stoner weed experience.
I mean, I can just imagine people like getting high, maybe on shrooms, maybe on weed, whichever one people prefer. I don't judge, but they just look at the record and they see a weed leaf and they're like, "Whoa, there's a plant. That plant grew from a seed. It like was watered, it was well cared for, and its destiny was not to be smoked, but to forever be trapped in the amber case that is a vinyl record that is now selling for thousands."
that is honestly such a good way to go as a plant.
You're destined to be
Forever a
mummified
vinyl
inside
record.
a spinning disc that contains music.
Yeah, imagine being mummified in Dope Smoker. That'd be so sick. That's what Matt Pike should do when he dies? He should take his ashes and like put them in like pressings of Dope Smoker.
Oh
So
God.
I think there's
You
a
know, I
band that did that. There's a band
no
that did that with
no
CDs.
I think there's a company that used to do that actually, where they like they would
What?
put your ashes and press them into a vinyl record, and you could have like your voice recorded, but like you just saying shit, whatever, like haha, I'm dead.
You're
And then like,
listening to me on my corpse.
yeah, you're listening to my corpse. Some would say that I'm getting played once again in my life.
That's so dumb.
Yeah, it's like, yeah, press me on a record so I can get played again and
Yeah,
again and again.
your corpse can be on Discogs. It's like, Juan, what's your median?
Make multiple copies of me and sell them around.
Yeah. Well, hey, it was awesome. Listen, it was awesome having you on the podcast. I'll definitely have you on again,
Yeah,
probably for
man.
the nuclear funeral interview. Um,
Sweet.
but yeah, thanks for just like talking about records and whatnot. You could follow Juan on Discogs. Check out his record collection. He's also on Instagram at Juan Too Many Records. Thanks for coming on, Juan.
Yeah,
And
thanks for
this
having me.
has been Disturbing the Priest.